Order. I call this meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Human Resources. I am Chris Palmer, the MLA for Kings West and the chair of the committee. Today, in addition to reviewing appointments to agencies, boards and commissions, we'll hear from witnesses regarding the Canada-Nova Scotia Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement 2021 to 2026. Look forward to the conversation. At this point, I'd like to ask all of our committee members to introduce themselves, naming their constituency as well. So we'll begin with MLA Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Larry Harrison, the MLA for Colchester-Musquodoboit Valley, and I'm filling in for MLA Sheehy Richard.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm John White. I'm the MLA for Glace Bay Dominion.
Good afternoon. Johnny McDonald, the MLA for Hants East.
Good day, everybody. Nolan Young, MLA for Shelburne.
Good afternoon, everyone. Susie Hanson, the MLA for Halifax Needham. It's good to see you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ali Dale, MLA Halifax Armdale.
Good afternoon, everyone. Derek Mumbercat, MLA for Sydney, Member 2.
Thank you, everyone. And just a gentle reminder, I'd like to ask everybody in the room to please put your phones to silent so we don't have any interruptions. And for the purposes of Hansard, I also recognize the presence of Legislative Counsel Gillian Schlemmer to my left and Legislative Committee Clerk Judy Kavanaugh to my right. So I'd like to let our guests know that we have a bit of business in our Human Resources Committee that we always attend to before we move on to our witnesses. We will attend to some agencies, boards, and commissions appointments, and then we'll ask you to introduce yourselves. So look for MLA McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the Department of Justice to the Nova Scotia Legal Aid Commission, I move to recommend Ronald R. Chisholm and Mark Ross Landry be appointed as part-time directors.
Thank you. The motion on the table. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Well, that was a quick list of ABCs today. So we will now move on to our meeting topic. Welcome one and all. The Canada-Nova Scotia Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement 2021 to 26 update. So we'd like to ask everybody at this point, and I'll begin on my left to go across the table, just as a brief introduction of your name and who you're representing, and then we'll come back to opening statements after that. So we'll begin with Ms. AuCoin.
Hi, I'm Pam AuCoin, the Executive Director of Early Learning and Childcare with the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Sara, Halliday. I'm the Associate Deputy Minister at the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development.
Good afternoon, everyone. Elwin, LeRoux, Deputy Minister at Education and Early Childhood Development.
Good afternoon, Kim Elliott. I'm the Executive Director of J. Norman College, and I'm here with the Early Learning and Childcare table.
My name is Thompson. I'm the Coordinator of Childcare now in Nova Scotia.
My name is Terri Roberts. I'm the Executive Director of ACENS, the Association of Early Childhood Educators of Nova Scotia.
Hi, I'm Janessa Williams. I'm a board member for the Association of Early Childhood Educators of Nova Scotia and also the Executive Director for Needham Early Learning Centre.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy Finley from the Department of Politics, Economics, and Canadian Studies at Mount St. Vincent University.
So again, good afternoon, and I'd like to offer our witnesses, anyone who would like to begin with an opening statement to have the opportunity, and I guess we'll begin with Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to join you today to speak on behalf of the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. The last time the department spoke to this committee about our transformation was in April of 2022, less than a year after signing the Canada-Nova Scotia Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement with the federal government in July of 2021. Now, near 3 years into the agreement, much has been accomplished to realize our shared vision of creating a high-quality, accessible, affordable, and inclusive early learning and childcare system in Nova Scotia. And why is this important? Quality childcare has been proven to significantly contribute to a child's cognitive, social, and emotional development, laying a solid foundation for lifelong learning and well-being. There are countless benefits to children, to families, to community, and even to the economy. In recognition of this importance, the Nova Scotia government, in partnership with our federal counterparts, now invests $333 million annually in early learning and childcare. That's an increase of more than $56 million this fiscal year. A significant part of this investment has gone toward professionalizing the childcare sector and recruiting and retaining early childhood educators. Given the limited time for my remarks, I can only highlight a few workforce improvements. The establishment of a wage scale for ECEs, raising wages between 14 and 42% for almost every ECE. A second wage increase of between $3.14 and $4.24 for ECEs working in provincially licensed childcare, and the introduction of a group benefits and pension package for all employees of the licensed sector. We've also supported new pathways into the sector with hundreds of people participating in new diploma and upskilling programs, new accelerated programs that get people into the workforce faster, new virtual programs that make learning accessible, especially responsive to rural and remote areas, and new programs specifically supporting newcomers, Francophones and Acadians, African Nova Scotian and Mi'kmaq people to help build a more inclusive system. Throughout all of this, we continue to rely on the Early Learning and Childcare Engagement Table made up of operators, ECEs, early childhood development experts, and families to center the voices of the community in our work. Nova Scotia's childcare system supports thousands of families with 324 centres, 14 family home agencies supporting 240 family home providers, and 71 Nova Scotia before and after school program sites. Our agreement targets expansion of 9,500 new spaces by March 31st, 2026. Successful space expansion is built on successful labor force development, recruitment, retention, and recognition of qualified and caring ECEs who make early learning and childcare a reality. That's what we've done in this historic transformation. Thank you for the opportunity to address this committee. We look forward to answering your questions this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy LeRoux. I believe, Ms. Thompson, you have an opening statement? Yes.
Thank you for having me. I'm from the Nova Scotia's chapter of Childcare Now, Canada's National Childcare Advocacy Association, which advocates for an accessible, affordable, inclusive, publicly funded nonprofit system. We know too many families can't access affordable childcare, but families want and need high-quality care and enriching opportunities to support their children's growth and development. The province is focusing on expanding spaces across the province, but this cannot be at the expense of quality. This means investing in the ECEs who provide that care. Thanks to the new defined benefits and pension plan, new ECEs can, for the first time, foresee a long career in the field. But pensions are only as strong as the contributions made to them, and the province's employer contributions remain too low, as do wages. Nova Scotia's ECE wage grid is not competitive enough to attract new workers, nor keep them in the field after facing among the lowest average yearly earnings for educators across Canada. The pension also comes too late for many educators nearing retirement who, for the rest of their careers, will pay into a pension and still retire into poverty. The plan is only available to those in licensed centres, so educators in the unlicensed before and after school program cannot participate, yet this is where most of the spaces are being created. The province must recognize that its pension and benefits plan is a stronger recruitment policy than a retention policy, but we need both. The leadership and mentorship of experienced educators will keep centres afloat. In their action plan, the province promises to pursue a new ECE certification model. The details are vague, but shouldn't be. We know already they must be empowered with the knowledge and skills to deliver this system. In Atlantic Canada, only Mount St. Vincent University offers the training in early childhood development on par with international standards. To build a quality system, the government must invest meaningfully in post-secondary education to support our ECE workforce. Like teachers, ECEs need opportunities to participate in paid, ongoing professional development, not added on to busy work days. And they must receive inclusion training as part of their degrees, not on the job, to support all children, migrant and immigrant children, Indigenous and Francophone children, those of all ethnicities and backgrounds, and across the spectrum of needs and abilities. Childcare Now Nova Scotia applauds the federal government's decision to uphold the original terms of the bilateral agreement with the province and not use public funds to expand for-profit childcare. Evidence overwhelmingly shows the strongest working conditions for educators and the highest quality care for children is provided in nonprofit centres. In writing that letter to the federal government, Nova Scotia indicated its willingness to cut corners to attempt to address its childcare crisis. No ECEs in any centre, whether nonprofit or for-profit, are getting the support they require and deserve. Despite these challenges, ECEs are doing an incredible job, but it shouldn't be as hard as it is, and it certainly cannot get any harder. Early childhood education lays the foundation for all children to reach their full potential. By supporting educators, Nova Scotia can take full advantage of this critical opportunity to build a sustainable childcare system to serve its children for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson, and my apologies, Ms. Elliott. I skipped over you for your opening statement, so we'll come back to you if you'd like to give some remarks, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Kim Elliott. I'm the Executive Director of J. Norman College in Truro. We're a non-funded, non-profit private college. The college has been part of early learning and childcare since 1976, when we started life at the Nova Scotia Teachers College. When Canada-wide was announced in July 2021, we were hopeful. Not only was the scope and the amount of funding substantially more than expected, 2 of the 3 basic supports to delivering early learning and childcare, physical infrastructure, and educator remuneration were being addressed quickly. And by 2023, we did grow our childcare spaces, and we have been able to pay our educators a better wage. The wage scale, the pension rollout, and the workforce bursary make a difference. 70% of our educators live more than 5 kilometers from their centres, and it sounds very simple, but our educators affording a reliable vehicle impacts our program's ability to operate daily. We have a student who's making the transition from vet tech to educator once she knew she could provide for herself and her 4 children. The family home directed funding means we're supporting family home childcare providers in places where there are childcare or near childcare deserts, like Tidnish or Belmont or Oxford. And we have interest from other places like Parsborough and Malagash because of the recruitment efforts. Coupled with portable subsidy and the early learning and childcare fee reduction means that we have 9 families who pay nothing for childcare. The expansion funding that allowed the college to partner with CCRCE and the town of Truro has brought us interest from another NGO for more potential childcare spaces. The nonprofit transition funding gave us the opportunity to keep 66 childcare spaces in Colchester. And prior to Canada-wide, Colchester was 63% for-profit and 37% nonprofit. Excluding our family home spaces, Colchester is now closer to a 50-50 mix. Things aren't all rosy. We have educators in their 60s. The pension is too late for them. We struggle to keep up with reporting on the multiple timelines and portals. When as a nonprofit, we're already overextended, but we would never get this chance again. And while we continue to need workforce development, we ask that it not be confused with quality for children and education for our educators. The question about the early years and the benefits to our health and economy have long been answered. We're trusting now that Canada-wide will put away the piecemeal funding and the patchwork programs and work towards an early learning and childcare system. This is a start of a wonderful thing, but it is not the whole thing, and we're not sustainable yet. Thank you for your time today and the opportunity to be witness to the Canada-wide in Nova Scotia.
Thank you, Ms. Elliott. Ms. Roberts, I believe you have some opening remarks as well.
Thank you very much. Without repeating too many of the things my lovely colleagues have already said, have a bit of perspective on some of the more behind-the-scenes work that goes into operating a childcare facility. Generally speaking, ECEs appreciate what the Canada-wide program has done and the funding it has created and have seen some benefits out of that. Some ECs are reporting to me that they are now experiencing an increase in professional esteem and recognition and respect for the profession. We're starting to get away from the "you're just glorified babysitters" rhetoric that has been around for too many decades. However, it is, again, as we've said already, not all great news. The individual centres are experiencing a lot of burden with administrative tasks that have not been accounted for in any way, shape, or form in the rollout of the funding. Some wait lists are going as far as 2028 now. There are kids on those wait lists who will actually be in school by the time their turn on the wait list comes up. One centre reported to me that they've got over 350 families on their wait list. That's one that's in HRM. Just managing the wait lists has become basically a whole other job in the sector that managers and directors of facilities are trying to do on top of the full-time jobs they're already doing. Centre managers are also experiencing aggressive behaviors from families, from parents who are angry and anxious and desperate for a spot. One of our members reported to me that she is now just no longer answering the phone. It has gotten so excessive that she just simply puts everything right through to her voicemail and usually doesn't get back to those. It has become absolutely inappropriate, some of the things people are saying. The wage scale and benefits package are fantastic. People are thrilled, but it is not rolled out yet, although that's the impression the general public seems to have. And so people are thinking, saying to DCs, well, you're on par with school teachers now, which of course they're absolutely not. We're not at that level yet. And even when it is fully rolled out, they won't be at those pay and benefits levels. And of course, we still don't have enough ECs, as people have already said. We're scrambling as fast as we can to get people through programs. At ASINS, we offer the RPL program to upgrade to a level 2, and we're getting people through it as quickly as we can, but we can't force people through that program if they don't meet the standards, if they don't meet the competencies that are laid out by the department, and rightfully so, because that's ultimately where we protect kids and give kids the best start in their early years. So it's great to push people through a program, but it doesn't mean they're coming out of the program with successful exam marks. And the national funding also, of course, doesn't address some of the intersectional complications that come along with a childcare facility. Of course, it's almost impossible in large facilities to meet the adult-to-child ratios. Nobody's complaining about the ratios existing. We agree with them, but it's very difficult to meet them when we don't have enough qualified people. And that, of course, cuts down on the amount of programming that can be offered, and that also cuts into what particularly can be offered to children with disabilities, and really hamstrings that situation. Instructors, or educators, are notoriously putting in incredibly long hours. There's no such thing as an 8-hour day for most of them. They're putting in 8 if they're lucky. 10, 12 is not uncommon. Going that entire span of a day without so much as a lunch break is not uncommon. We are not allowing the basic human needs of our educators to be met, and that is a situation that cannot continue, because that's a lot of where the burnout comes from. So there's good. It's not all bad news, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. Dr. Finlay.
Thanks for the invitation to speak today. When I spoke here last in 2018, I focused on 3 key problems of the prevailing market-based approach to childcare: wages, fees, and spaces. A lot has changed since then, as we've already heard from our colleagues. While not perfect, much progress has been made on both wages and fees, facilitated by the Canada-wide agreements. So today I'll spend my brief time on the third element, the expansion of spaces, with an emphasis on evidence-based policymaking. I am a researcher, after all. So one of the results of the reduction in fees is, of course, the ramping up of demand. There was already an acute shortage of spaces. I'm sure you've all seen the CCPA research on childcare deserts, for example. Now demand has intensified even more with families seeking childcare. We know expansion is necessary. How to expand is the critical policy challenge, however. Expansion needs to be carefully planned. This is why, for instance, Childcare Now's latest project is called Growth by Design. Planning requires intention and purpose-built governance infrastructure. It's unfortunate that the central organization to manage system building, originally part of Nova Scotia's Early Learning and Childcare Plan, has been put on hold. This, along with the Minister's Engagement Table, which, full disclosure, I sit on, was an innovation that other provinces had not included in their plans, and it was celebrated by childcare policy experts. But it's not too late. We can still put that organization in place. The simple expansion of spaces isn't enough. Expansion needs to be in the nonprofit, especially public sector. The Canada-wide agreements prioritize nonprofit expansion and building a public system. This is what years of international evidence tells us is good public policy. It ensures quality, sustainability, accountability, and allows for integration with other important public services and institutions. There was a recent request, as we heard already, by the current provincial government to weaken these principles in the Canada-wide agreements. That would be a mistake. And it was welcome news that the federal government has remained committed to the intended plan and to the provisions of the historic federal legislation just passed in March. It is also encouraging that the department's strategy is to embrace that evidence by focusing on public institutions as key to expanding a true system of early learning and childcare in the province. That so many families are eager to access this newly evolving system shows us how life-changing, high-quality, affordable public services can be, and reminds us of the meaningful impact that good, evidence-based policy can have. I've said many times now at the Minister's Engagement Table that as a feminist researcher interested in progressive social policy, I don't often get the chance to talk about good news. It feels a bit strange for me, but I can get used to it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Finlay, and thank you all for your opening statements. So we will begin our question period at this point for all of our members to be able to ask you questions. Our method of questioning here is by show of hands, so I will be looking around the table, looking for colleagues to raise their hands for questions. I will allow for a follow-up question. I did see your hand there. I will allow for a follow-up question if it's related to the first question. It's not an opportunity for the members of the table to ask a separate question. So we will begin. I did see MLA Duale, and then I saw MLA Hanson, and then I saw MLA Young, and then I saw MLA Mumbercat. So MLA Hanson, you'll begin, and we will do our questioning until, sorry? You said Duale first. Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Thank you. That's what happens at the very first when everyone puts their hands up at one time. MLA Duale, you'll be first, and our questioning will go till 2:40, and then we'll allow for a brief closing statement. MLA Duale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be at the department, the deputy. Sometimes I feel conflicting myself. We know the Premier and the PC government have intention to double our population in 2030. And we signed this agreement for the federal government, 2026, to reach 9,500 spaces. So far, we have 3,420 spaces, a 3-year span. In that agreement, we have only 2 years left. How realistic is to reach that goal, to open new spaces? And I thank Dr. Tammy for her vision and her research. And the point is not how quick you can put the new spaces. It's how you can design spaces that will have a ripple effect to generations to come. And we know the clock's clicking, the time is clicking. And we signed this agreement. And I personally believe it was a great opportunity for our province to get this money for the federal government in order to reach where we're supposed to be. So would you share for the committee, how can you reach this goal in a very short time while you have done last 3 years, 3,000? Thank you.
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and thank you for the question. I do want to draw folks' attention to the dashboard that we publish at the Department of Education and Early Childhood Development. It shows you quarterly our growth to achieving that goal. If you were to look there today, you'd see in the last quarter, so that would be January 1 till the end of March, we grew by 662 seats, bringing our total growth to 4,523 spaces to date, on track for our 9,500. So the question becomes, do you expect to grow at the same rate over the period of 2021 to 2026? We don't. We actively did not. We wanted to make sure at the beginning to build a solid foundation upon which growth and continued growth could be built. We wanted to make sure that we weren't only creating spaces, we were assuring the 4 pillars of this agreement. They need to be spaces that are high quality. We need to be talking about that from the beginning. We need to talk about accessibility and affordability and inclusion. Those 4 elements were one of the reasons why our growth earlier on is not a linear growth, but rather we intended a slower, build a strong foundation, accelerate as we go through. The ultimate question you've asked me is, are we going to hit that target by March 31st, 2026? And the answer to that is an absolute yes. We are on track to meet 9,500 new spaces by March 31st, 2026.
Is there a follow-up, Emily Dwally?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr.
Emily
Chair.
Dwally.
Thank you for your answer, and I hope that's the case. I'm sure this is a public committee, and this will be the public record. And I hope that target will be met and will be the best interest of Nova Scotians. My follow-up question is, if you don't reach that target, would you commit to continue this $10 before you reach that target? We know childcare is a provincial jurisdiction, but we were lucky enough to have the support of the federal government. Do you have a plan to continue this if you're not able to reach that target?
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. We will meet the target of 9,500 new spaces by March 31st, 2026. So I'm not concerned about whether or not we will or won't. In fact, because we've built a solid system, we know childcare doesn't end at 9,500 net new spaces. Our community continues to grow. We're very aware that community is saying, we need more. We need more throughout Nova Scotia. We're working to that. We need a solid base, and we need to continue to build. But I said when I was at Public Accounts in the winter, the journey to 12,000 spaces goes right through 9,500. The journey to 20,000 spaces, it goes right through 9,500. We need to achieve that target by March 31st, 2026, en route to our next, what Nova Scotia says is necessary to support the growth in our population. Right now, I can assure committee, we have a solid plan and a solid program upon which we will continue to build after 2026.
Thank you. MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was glad to hear that the 4 pillars, because I couldn't put them off the top of my head, but quality, accessibility, affordability, and inclusion. And I just wanted to this is to the department. Last week it was reported that nearly a year ago, the YWCA Halifax submitted a proposal to this government for a new child care center that would specifically serve children with disabilities. Despite having a space identified and designs made, YWCA Halifax has yet to receive a response from the government. Can you comment on the status of this proposal, Deputy?
Deputy, well, I'll always give you the first option, and then you can defer from there. So, Deputy LeRoux.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I can feel the vibrating in my seats next to me as
That's
people
what I
are
thought. That's why I
excited to have the opportunity to participate. So quality does matter, MLA Hanson, and inclusion is really important in the work we are doing. I will ask our executive director to share with you some of the things we're doing, and then specifically about the current proposal from YMCA.
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. And thank you, Emily Hanson, for that question. Absolutely, as we've already talked about, one of the pillars of the Canada-wide agreement is a commitment to quality and inclusion is absolutely foundational to the work that we are doing in the department when it comes to starting at the beginning for our early childhood educator programs that they take part in our post-secondary institutions, to professional learning that they can avail of once they're in practice and working as early childhood educators, a number of programs and funding supports that are offered to families of children living with complex needs who are enrolled in centers, and absolutely ensuring that all children have access to inclusive childcare is a priority for us. When it comes to the specific project that you referenced, again, we are working very closely with the YWCA. We are aware of the proposal and working with them on learning more about it, on what could be a very exciting partnership opportunity for us. We did just implement or roll out last week our major infrastructure program, which outlines our commitments and our priority areas around inclusive spaces that serve the needs of marginalized communities and children living with complex complex needs, and we look forward to evaluating that proposal in light of that program guidelines.
Emily Hansen, do you have a follow-up?
I think you kind of answered it, because I was going to ask about inclusive spaces, like at the YWCA. Will you be including that strategy within that plan with the YWCA so that it can be in place for those young people that need it?
Ms. AuCoin.
Absolutely. We're always very excited to work with any of our early learning and child care partners, again, to create spaces that are inclusive, looking for high-quality programming and high-quality educators. And that's why the proposal that has been submitted by the Y is something we look forward to learning more about and partnering on that opportunity.
Thank you. MLA Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question go to the department. There have been many comparisons on the accomplishments different provinces have achieved on childcare. And I can imagine that the systems in place prior to this agreement were vastly different in New Brunswick and PEI and Nova Scotia. My question is, can you elaborate on where Nova Scotia started? I guess more specifically, where on day one to where we are today and the progress that has been made?
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, our ADM, Sara Halliday, is one of the few people who's been here and carries the history back to that date, so she probably has some comments on that.
Ms. Halliday.
Thank you. So I think if anyone follows the legislature, you would have heard our minister describe our system of childcare as a patchwork quilt. So I think to take us back sort of before the Canada-wide agreement, we have individual operators who decided this is something that they would like to do for a variety of reasons. There was very little, I would say, government involvement in that market-based system. There was limited grant funding that was available to childcare operators to help offset some wages and different sort of minor help, I would say, to these individual centers. And they operated very much independent. And I would say the other piece would be our licensing function of government was probably one of our main interactions with the childcare sector. That has significantly changed over the years, and in particular since the signing of the Canada-wide agreement, because it's an unprecedented investment in this sector. And I think I won't get into all the details, but a couple of things that have already been mentioned. A historic investment in wages to bring the wages of early childhood educators into a wage grid. Prior to that, it would have been determined by the employer, would have been related to minimum wage that was in place in the province and what an individual operator would be paying their staff in that center. So we have a different compensation system now. We've recently announced and are rolling out the pension and benefits, which is a significant change for the sector. Again, that would have been very limited number of centers that would have the ability to provide that benefit to their employees, and it would have been done at a very individual center level. It wasn't a systematic thing at all. Another piece I'll mention is around the parent fees. So fees parents pay to have their children attend childcare. So originally we introduced a 25% reduction on average to those fees. Later that turned into a 50% reduction. So massive. Anyone who's paid childcare fees in this room would appreciate what a significant investment impact that has on individual families. Creating spaces. We, like in a market-based system, individual operators make decisions about their operations. So they want to retire, they close their childcare center. We have an opportunity now, in a way that we never did before, to be able to support either continuing those childcare operations under a different provider, creating a not-for-profit stabilization to continue those spaces, or an investment to create new spaces. So I think that's another significant. And then the workforce and training investment for the ECEs. And I'm going to stop there. But
Thank you. MLA Young for a follow-up.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, the $64,000 question or the $10 question. How, when will we get to $10 a day?
Deputy? Deputy LeRoux.
I think we could all answer that one in saying our plan currently, and we are on track to have $10 a day on average by March 31st, 2026. It is in our schedule, and it's in balance with all of the other priorities that we have. We will meet the $10 a day by March 31st, 2026.
Thank you. MLA Mumbercap.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. Some familiar faces too as well from back in 2021. I have had the fortune of representing Sydney as an MLA for almost 10 years now, but I can tell you that day in 2021 will go down as probably one of the highlights for me in my career when the agreement was signed. And what that meant is not only, as we've heard from stakeholders today from all of you, it was about taking the system, making sure that our ECEs are treated right, but it was also ultimately about our kids. And it was about making sure that we could do whatever we can and work as hard as we could with the stakeholders to make sure that there was an agreement in place. I always recognize the staff at the department. I had the honor of being their minister for a while for the work that they did. And it's not easy. And as we've heard today, of course, there's going to be challenges that comes when you're rolling out something this significant. I will say, not to get too political, I do not like when the government speaks out of both sides of their mouth when it comes to one day the agreement's good and one day the agreement's not. And that's unfortunate because I think that devalues the work that everybody's trying to do to support our kids. So I'll leave it at that for now. But my question goes back to, as I said, you go down this journey, working with the federal government, looking at all of the aspects, understanding the relationship between the nonprofit and the private, making sure that all of our ECs have the ability to access support and training and wages and pensions, and to see it roll out is really, for me, it's great. I hear it from ECs at home, and we also see 24-hour service popping up at the healthcare facility in Sydney, which is great. I hope we see more of that across the province too as well. But it goes back to the question about the target. So you're committing today that you will hit the target of 9,500 spaces. But my question to the stakeholders, and it could be to anyone, really is, and some examples were mentioned around paperwork and administration and whatnot, and then there were some comments about how the leadership group hasn't met or isn't meeting. So what can we do to help alleviate some of those pressures under that agreement? If you want to elaborate on that, that would be great.
So that's directed to Ms. Roberts.
It could be to anyone, really. Yeah, sure. Because Ms. Roberts said it, yeah.
So, yeah. Ms. Roberts.
Janessa, if I can actually turn that over to you for...
Ms. Williams.
Yes, sir.
I
just have a question. When you say the leadership group, what you're referring to?
MLA, just a quick reminder, just to wait till the red light comes on. MLA Mumbercap.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It was in reference to the minister's table. There was the table that was set up to help oversee the child care agreement. It was mentioned in comments earlier that it hasn't met or it's been formed but hasn't been meeting. Can somebody confirm that for me?
Dr. Finley?
I mentioned it in my comments, so maybe there are two institutions. One is the table, which meets very regularly and I think has been excellent in terms of providing information to us in the community and also taking feedback from us. The piece that's missing is in the agreements there was also a promise of creating an organization that would be responsible for managing the planning of the system, and that has not occurred. in my comments, I hope that will change, because I think that's a really important piece to providing the structure we need as the system rolls out.
Emily Mumbercat for a follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my second question, we'll get to some other rounds, is around the seats rurally, because this was a big conversation back in the day too as well. It's like looking at the infrastructure that would have been in place in rural communities across the province, and that issue around accessibility, and some of the comments that were made. I believe Ms. Elliott made them around some of the examples that she gave in rural parts of the province when it came to the increase in seats. I guess this question would be for the department. How are those numbers looking in rural parts of the province when it comes to seats that may have been added and seats that have been lost?
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. There's a couple of ways that I look at this, to be very honest. Having 4 children, if you need childcare, it's a crisis for you. If you can't access the workforce, you can't access your routine, et cetera, et cetera. So we know throughout Nova Scotia there are pressures for childcare. We do look at county level and we have enough information to know what actions do we need to take. And quite frankly, we can expand in just about every county in Nova Scotia and make a meaningful difference for the families who are there. So there isn't more data we need to say, oh, don't do it here, do it there as priority. In every family's case, when they don't have childcare, it is a problem. So the 7 programs that we currently have that we could go into in detail about space creation do target right across the province. How can we expand to assure childcare for families in each area, including rural areas? We do have some specific initiatives. I mentioned online training that particularly is intended to be responsive to folks living in rural areas, where travel and geography prevent barriers to access for training. So there are those. If we want to talk about the space creation throughout the province, I can defer to Pam because she'll be able to highlight them much more quickly than I will. Is that helpful?
Sure.
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you for the question. As we referenced earlier, we have created over 4,500 spaces throughout Nova Scotia. That's part of our Expression of Interest program that opened in 2021. There were 50 projects that were dispersed throughout Nova Scotia, including in our rural areas, to expand existing centres. With a market-based system, however, it is quite common to see the infrastructure for childcare in more populated areas. So it is a priority for us in our space expansion projects. For example, the recently announced major infrastructure program, our minor infrastructure program that was announced in January, and then certainly one of our initiatives that we think is particularly responsive to rural areas is our family home child care program. Back in January, we announced a startup grant, $7,500 for new family home child care providers. We also launched a recruitment campaign targeting our more rural communities, also Francophone communities, African Nova Scotian communities, to generate more child care in those areas where a center of 50 or 60 children may not be operationally feasible for an operator to go in there. We've had tremendous success for the Family Home Startup Program. In about 6 weeks alone, we've had almost 40 homes, 40 individuals come forward and be part of that program, many of which are in rural areas. And I would also invite members of the witnesses here, for example, we have a family home child care agency with Jane Norman College and also supports our family home child care ECE diploma program as well.
Thank you very much. MLA White.
Thank you, Chair. Good time to chime in. So clearly government is focused on creating more childcare spaces and expanding across the province, as you're talking about. And you mentioned the minor infrastructure program, which is an $11 million investment. And the major infrastructure program is another $25 million. So my question is, how are these programs developed? What goes into ensuring that these are programs needed to support and create new spaces?
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. I always appreciate an opportunity to talk about our expansion programs. As I already mentioned, our Expression of Interest program was our first expansion that was announced early on within our Canada-wide agreement. That resulted in the approval of over 50 projects and 1,500 spaces across the province, of about which half are currently online. When it comes to the other programs more recently announced, Family Home Startup Grant, Major Infrastructure, and Minor Infrastructure, those programs have been developed based on lessons learned from our first round of expansion projects, our Expression of Interest program. They've also been informed by what we see happening across the country, learning from our counterparts in other provinces and territories around what's worked well. We also speak every day to our early learning and childcare operators, including those who are actively developing expansion projects, on what the opportunities and challenges are. As an example, we did, when we were developing the Major Infrastructure Program guidelines, we did bring those guidelines to our Minister's Engagement table. It was discussed around the table, same with our Minor Infrastructure Program, actually, to get their feedback and incorporate what we learned into those program guidelines. They've been very well received. Last week, we actually announced our first project approved under the Minor Infrastructure Program, about 70 seats coming to Hammonds Plains, one of our not-for-profit providers who actually transitioned from a for-profit to a not-for-profit under our transition program, opening 70 to 80 spaces there. It takes a village. We also have about 5 other organizations at various stages of approval for that program. The major program was just launched. Days go by so fast. I think it was late last week. We just held our first meeting information call with the sector yesterday, actually. We had over 100 people participate in that call. We've had dozens upon dozens of email inquiries and phone inquiries about that program, and have had reach outs from some of our partners just to say how pleased they are with having seen the feedback they provided to the department incorporated into those program guidelines. So absolutely, when we roll out any new programs, it's important for us to do that in consultation with the sector to make sure that our space expansion programs are responsive to what communities and operators need.
Emily White for a follow-up.
Just quickly, I'm just wondering if you can help us understand how many spaces the department think these programs will create.
Ms. AuCoin?
Thank you. So the goal within our Family Home Startup Grant Program, that was a $2 million investment. We are anticipating about 250 homes would come online for that. We have a target of 25 homes a quarter. And as I mentioned, we already exceeded that within a month of rolling out the Family Home Startup Grant Program, so that's very promising. The funding that's allocated for the Major Infrastructure Program, the Minor Infrastructure Program, that's about $8 million under our Canada-wide agreement. Based on some lessons learned from some of our expansion projects, some smaller renovations that can come online a little more quickly. So it's targeted towards less complex, lower cost projects. We're targeting 800 spaces under that program. And then we have our Major Infrastructure Program, which is more complex, more costly, investing in more public infrastructure, new builds, et cetera. We are targeting about 650 spaces underneath that program. But of course, we hope to create as many spaces as possible using the funding that's available to us.
Thank you, Ms. AuCoin. MLA McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to prerequisite that recently the minister did send a letter to the federal government, and I'll be honest, and their point that they're not willing to make any change. I'll be honest, I'm disappointed in them because there's other provinces that allow expansion into it. I think all the daycares should have been included. But for that, what I would like to know is what was the percent of private daycare versus private versus public or nonprofit before and currently? That'll be my two-part, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And I'll pass this to, we'll go to, I almost called you MLA AuCoin. I almost gave you a demotion. Yeah. Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. Prior to the signing of the Canada-wide agreement, the not-for-profit childcare sector made up about 40% of our spaces, and the for-profit was about 60%. So since that time, there has been some gain in the not-for-profit sector. We're currently at 46% not-for-profit and 54% for-profit operators.
Thank you. Emily McDonald, were those your questions, or do you have a quick follow-up?
It's not a quick follow-up, so I'll just put me on
You
the
in
list,
the next
Mr.
round?
Chair.
Very
yeah.
good. All right. MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this question is to the department. In the agreement, it mentions the development of a data management system to produce real-time information and metrics on the families who want care, families who are accessing care, and the programs or staff providing it. Curious to know, has this been created?
Ms. AuCoin.
So as we already referenced, this transformation of early learning and childcare is truly historic, and we're working very hard to make decisions with the data and information that's available to us, but acknowledging that we do need a more robust information technology system that supports our decision making. So gathers information about families that need childcare, about children who are enrolled in childcare, but can certainly support our operators as well in reducing their administrative burden. You heard from our witnesses earlier about the paperwork and reporting that's required, and that is largely due to the fact that we don't have a robust IT system in place, and many of our operators don't have robust IT systems in place either. So it definitely is an area that we are looking at to build a new information technology system. When we look at the information that we need, if it's more around wait list and registration type information, that information would be really helpful for us to plan childcare expansion. But as Deputy LeRoux mentioned earlier, we know right now that childcare is needed across all areas of the province, and it's wonderful to see the improvements we've made to affordability for childcare, and that so many more people can now afford childcare, but that has had the impact of increasing demand considerably. When we implemented the Canada-wide agreement around the centralized agency that was referenced earlier, one of the items that we looked at that organization working with us on was a centralized waitlist and registration sort of program, amongst other things. And that was met with some concern from the sector, which we needed to take a step back on and kind of evaluate more broadly what the support systems that need to be in place for the sector are. So it's not that we're backing away from necessarily the end result being a centralized agency or a centralized waitlist and registration function. It's that we need to work more with the sector and with our operators to understand what the needs are, what the gaps are, so that we can co-design, which we've it's no surprise that's the best way to go forward with any sort of a change, is to do it in collaboration with who it impacts most, so families and operators.
Emily Hanson for a follow-up.
So, and just by hearing this, I think, this is another way of the patchwork design that we're trying to step away from, is the fact that we don't actually have the additional foundation in place to do the work that needs to be done, because then there's not a structure to be able to say, like, for example, when I use the YWCA, there's not a structure in place to say this is a priority. You have the data, you have all of the information that you need in order to place spaces in all parts of the province, but yet there's not a structure and a database in place to be able to say these are the priorities. We need to get this organized. Let's place it here, here, and here. And I think that's what we're missing. If we think about, we have these pieces that were put in the agreement for a reason, because it's important information to have. I think when we miss it, we're still doing the patchwork piecemeal work. And I think that's something that we should be working on more robustly, to be able to make sure that we have a number of spaces, available for folks. And I know that there's a lot of other factors to just say spaces, but I put that forward because that is a missing piece that is crucial, that we hear from a lot of operators, that we hear from folks on the ground doing the work that is needed, so that it can alleviate those pressures off of the work that they're doing, and continue to focus on the children that they're caring for. So I say that all because I would hope that we could take this forward and maybe put a priority on making sure that that part of that system is being taken care of in order to put the pieces together. So, I mean, I guess that's not a question, it's follow-up, but...
But, okay, well, thank you, MLA Hanson. MLA Young.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So early on, when the agreement was signed under the previous government, we had operators that walked away, and some of the centres across the province would have shut their doors. I'm just wondering if you could share the progress that this government has made in the last 3 years, and maybe some of the pressure points that we're still facing.
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do think on space creation, Pam wanted to speak to the details of that, but I will just highlight as Pam collects her thoughts, this is an important issue, one that we believed we should be reporting publicly quarterly. That's why we have a dashboard on our website. And I'll say, I'm proud that that dashboard shows you the creation and also shows you when independent businesses make business decisions like retiring, there is a net negative for the community. We publish that. We're not trying to hide it. We're actually trying to be very transparent about here's our growth to 9,500 and here's the other stuff that's happening that's also having an impact in community, so it can be transparent. Pam can also disaggregate that data to show you how many family homes. I believe there's 671 spaces in family homes. So someone whose children are now school age and decides, I'm not going to take kids into my home anymore. I'm going to close my family home practice. So that has a net negative to us. I believe there's 632 family home spaces that have been closed and 471 spaces in centers. That's actually what's happening. As far as the closures go, that's the data that we track. And again, you would see on our website, and we've referenced it earlier, there is a complete dashboard that shows quarterly our progress to 9,500. And between January 1st, March 31st, that's the last quarter that we've got up there already, we've created 662 new spaces in early learning and childcare. Sorry, Pam, I spoke on your behalf.
So, Ms. AuCoin, would you like to add anything to that, or?
Sure.
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. So I would just like to acknowledge that childcare operators and spaces closing is nothing new to the early learning and childcare sector. As Deputy LeRoux mentioned, we have 324 centers across the province. We currently have more than 240 family homes, and it's regular occurrences that centers decide to close for various reasons. Early on within our Canada-wide agreement, taking advantage of what was a very lucrative real estate market, probably still is, to whether it would be sell their home or sell their business. But it's nothing new for us at the department to manage center closures and family home closures. Since the signing of the Canada-wide agreement, as the deputy mentioned on our dashboard, we have had 471 center-based closures. That represents 17 individual operators, 15 of which were for-profit and 2 of which were not-for-profit. We do have a not-for-profit transition pilot program, which was implemented early on within the Canada-wide agreement as a result of prioritization of the funding to the not-for-profit sector. To date, we've transitioned 7 commercial private operators into a not-for-profit model. That has stabilized about 360 spaces, so it meant that those spaces were not lost in community. They were retained by not-for-profit at a cost of about $2.5 million, which, if you work that out over the space, is a very good return on that versus having to create new spaces. In addition, we have another 6 commercial operators at various stages of not-for-profit transition, representing about another 450 spaces as well.
Thank you. MLA Young for a quick follow-up.
Just a real quick follow-up. As my colleague MLA McDonald would say, for the millions of viewers watching right now across the world, how would they access the dashboard?
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you. It is offered publicly on our website. So ednet.ns.ca is the Department of Education. Childcare Nova Scotia.
Maybe we could ask the deputy, if you'd like to, as a follow-up, maybe send access to information about the dashboard to the clerk, and maybe
Be
the
my
clerk
pleasure.
can disseminate that through to the members. That'd be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. MLA Dwally.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just following the order of the committee. This question was part of my first question, but we allow question and follow-up, so I'm just taking this advantage. I'm just wondering if the province is planning to assist private operators to expand this space.
That'd be, okay, we'll go to Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you are aware, we have an agreement with the federal government called the Canada-Nova Scotia Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. It does provide restrictions, and at the highest of level, what it says is we're working to expand childcare at the not-for-profit. There's good information that supports why we would do that. One of the reasons that the federal minister has said in talking to our minister about it is that we want profits from childcare going back into the sector, not business profits to individuals who run businesses. There are many ways of making money in business. There's nothing wrong with what our private operators are doing, but in this time, as we expand, it is in the best interest of all that we expand in the not-for-profit sector. So that's currently what we are doing. It is worth noting that we value our private operators in this sector currently. They access all of the other benefits within the Canada-Nova Scotia Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Agreement. They have access to operational funds. Their staff will have access to pension and benefits as that rolls out this fall. All of the other things are there. They are not excluded from that. It's only on the principle of expansion. The investment of dollars from those federal dollars is to ensure not-for-profit expansion of childcare to the benefit of all.
MLA Dwally for a follow-up.
Yes, thank you. Therefore, if that's the case, first of all, we know for the fact the private sector is your biggest sector, a stakeholder for childcare. Secondly, we know childcare is a provincial jurisdiction. And because of that reason, the province has the obligation and responsibility, whether it's a private or non-profit, to create space for Nova Scotians. So my earlier question, you have indicated you are on track. And if that is the case, how would you able to achieve that goal if you're not investing your biggest stakeholder in the sector, while you have the obligation and the responsibility as a provincial jurisdiction? Thank you.
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. Earlier during our conversation, our executive director did outline 7 programs that we have currently in place that are strategies for us to expand in the childcare sector. We believe that those programs are netting results. The evidence of that is online. You can see that. Everyone can track our progress. We're not only doing those 7 things. Those are the 7 things that we have in play right now. We will continue to seek other strategies. We're constantly working to expand childcare in Nova Scotia. That's why our minister met with the federal minister, just to ask, let's explore differently, not to signal, I don't agree philosophically. It's to marry that with practically there are genuine struggles in Nova Scotia. So I offer that as an example of we are working to leave no stone unturned in what we can do to assure the 9,500 spaces. But we do recognize, and you've asked other witnesses to come today who are expert in the field who can help us understand why expansion with the private operator is not our go-to in this moment. Why an investment in not-for-profit will, in the long run, benefit all in our province.
Thank you, Deputy. Our next three questions will come from MLA McDonald, MLA White, and MLA Hanson. And I'd like to ask any member that would like to put your hand up. So that'd be great. MLA McDonald.
I'll leave for you. Oh, pardon me. Sorry. So let's just go back to the point of private centers, their businesses, and it's not a dirty word. I own a company. And many of them don't want to just give up a business they've personally invested in. So most private operators are not rolling in cash. It's not like they're making millions and millions of dollars into it. So what I would like to know is, can you explain what role they currently have within the agreement? And I'll give you the follow-up to save the chair. Can you share the department did to work with private operators in becoming part nonprofit? There you go, Mr. Chair.
To Ms. Halliday.
Thank you. So the deputy did touch on this a few moments ago, but and I think it goes without saying, they, regardless of not-for-profit or for-profit, every operator is important in our system right now. They're valued partners as we move forward in this transformation. And I think it's just worth noting that under the agreement, our for-profit operators sort of fully participate in all of the benefits that we've been talking about today in relation to the wage increases for the staff, the pension and benefits program that's been rolled out, the parent fee reductions. Similarly, our subsidy program that was available for families. So all of those features of the Canada-wide agreement are fully participated by all of our operators. And I think with the exception of that, the one piece around expansion, where there is limitation on the use of federal funding to further expand childcare in a for-profit situation. So, but I just want to make sure that we're really clear about how important the importance that we put on all of our operators, regardless of how they operate. And you're completely accurate. Like, there is a variety of childcare operators across the province, and there's lots of cases where I don't know how to set up a not-for-profit business, and it didn't matter at one point because that's not you were just interested in childcare and offering that in your community. So we have a history there that we're bringing into this new agreement, and we are trying to make a transformative change, and we need all of our partners to participate in that. I think I missed your follow-up part.
Emily McDonald?
It's what work was done for the private operators in becoming not-for-profit. So what's the work done on that? And
Ms. Halliday?
Yeah, so Pam had mentioned earlier, we actually had a program in place around I think it was called the Not-for-Profit Transition Pilot. So that would be operators who had operated as a commercial entity who were, for a variety of reasons, thinking that it might make sense for their operations or their childcare center to transition into a not-for-profit. So that was a program that we had available where we worked with the operator in having them set up something like a not-for-profit board, which they wouldn't have had experience with before. And the department, through that program, supported those operators in making that transition. There was some financial investment made there to help support the business, allowed them to hire professional services if that's what they needed to transition that business. So, I don't know. Pam might have.
Thank you, Ms. Halliday. MLA White.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Finley, in your opening remarks, you referenced the recent news from the federal government that they denied a request from the minister to provide support for private operators. And I think you said that they stuck to the intended plan. I think that's what was said there. Can you discuss with us your thoughts on provinces like New Brunswick, Ontario, and Alberta, where the funding agreements do make allowances for private operators to be covered under the same policy? Please, thank you.
Dr. Finley.
Thank you. I wanted to answer the last question, so I'm getting the chance, a second kick at the can. I'm going to take a step back. So many of us have been involved in advocating for childcare for a long, long time, and many before us for at least 50 years. And so we're really late to the game in terms of developing this transformative system of early learning and childcare. But one of the advantages of being late to the party is that we can learn from the leaders. And so we know from watching decades of other jurisdictions be leaders, but also those who have not, who have failed from a policy perspective in rolling out these kinds of systems. I was very brief in my comments, but we know from looking at what happens in those other places that expansion in the not-for-profit and public system ensures higher quality services. It ensures that the services are accountable, they're publicly accountable. For instance, I sit on the board of Mount St. Vincent University's Child Study Center. We have a board where faculty, students, parents sit on that board and they help make decisions. They are democratically involved in the decision-making of that center. That is an important public accountability mechanism. The services are more sustainable. We heard already in our conversation today. We don't want to lose centers because someone decides to make a personal but important private business decision to retire. We want those services to be sustainable. We want them to be here for decades. And so one of the vulnerabilities we have when we rely on market-based systems is that individual business decisions affect the whole system, and we want to move away from that. It doesn't mean that those, as we've heard, for-profit providers haven't been essential to providing services to families in the province. And the department has been very careful to support those programs. The only aspect that they don't have access to is expansion. They have access to all of the other supports that were already referenced in terms of pensions, benefits, and all of the other system support mechanisms that are in place. Member McDonald, you talked about, for instance, the businesses, them not wanting to give up their business. So no one's been asked to give up their business. Everyone's business can continue. They will continue to have all the supports they have. But the expansion piece will occur in the not-for-profit and public system. And that's, again, because that's what we know has worked elsewhere. And we've learned, we have the benefit of that knowledge now that, that we've waited so long to do this, that we can take those lessons and implement them.
Emily Hanson, next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're very welcome.
Good to see you back over there. That was one of my questions. I'm glad you answered that, but it gives me an opportunity to ask another question. This is to Child Care Now, Tammy Finley, Terri Roberts, the Association of ECEs. I'm sorry I said your first names, but you know who I'm talking about. I'm curious to know if you could discuss the current challenges facing the ECE workforce right now.
Ms. Roberts?
I will actually turn that over to Janessa Williams, who is in fact on the floor and operating a child care center. Go ahead.
Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So ECEs right now, From my perspective, I sit on the Nonprofit Directors Association as well as the Association for Early Childhood Educators of Nova Scotia, is very twofold. So for a lot of nonprofit ECEs, things like sick benefits and vacation hasn't changed. Everything has remained in place. And when I talk to ECEs that may work in private centers, some of their sick time has been taken from them as a result of this Canada-wide thing. So there has always been a divide with nonprofit and private, and while this new system is in place to bring us together and collaborate, there's still things that are happening that aren't fair to ECEs across the board. So yes, their wages are the same across the board. We're having a rollout of pension and benefits. But when it comes down to hearing ECEs talk about poor working conditions or not having enough supports in their classrooms for children with needs, that's on the operator, not the government. It's up to us as operators to then go to the government and say, hey, we're in a crisis right now. We have more than 10% of our classrooms with special needs. I need to apply for operational support, which has been a wonderful part of the Canada-wide, that we can access that. Personally, my centre has accessed it twice. We provide all of our financial information to the government. It's a back and forth. So to put it on the government that ECEs are struggling, I don't think is fair. But what I do want to say is that for operators in the nonprofit sector to expand, that's where the support needs to come, is to us, because we don't have anybody to go to. We have our boards. ECEs come to the operators. So it's all on our shoulders.
MLA Hanson, oh, sorry. MLA,
I was just going to say, does anyone else want to speak to that? We're good?
follow-up, MLA Hanson?
Yeah, absolutely. Could you speak to the current trends in retention and recruitment?
That's directed to...
Whoever would like to answer.
Okay, Ms. Elliott.
There we go.
Hand up. Very good. Ms. Elliott.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Recruitment and retention is difficult. I have 9 interviews on Friday for 3 spaces for an assistant director and an ECE. Recently, for the previous group that we were looking for, I received 120 applications. Less than 10% of those were qualified. I suspect that's what everybody is experiencing. We have almost 10% of our staff, of around 40-ish, which is full-time and part-time ECEs, either out on stress leave or mat leave, short-term disability. And again, I expect that's what everybody else is facing in the sector. So, I take Ms. Williams' point that that is not the government's fault, and they have been helpful in supporting us with that. I suspect that's what we're all facing with businesses right now. But it's tough when you can't take the work home with you. And if our folks are sick, we've closed rooms, we've sent children home. And again, we know the other centers are doing that as well. So that's the landscape that we're working with currently.
Thank you very much. MLA Membercat.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just on MLA Hanson's conversation around special needs. It's something I hear a lot at home. My wife is, she's a learning center teacher in the local elementary school system, and it's a big conversation we have at home because she brings a lot of it home. And we're talking about some of the supports that need to be in place to help support the operators. It's a lot. It is a lot. And every situation is special in its own way. And I guess my first question will be to the department. What supports are you providing to the operator? If an operator comes forward that needs additional support, what are you providing to help support those spaces that would be for children with special needs?
Deputy LeRoux, or pass it to Ms. AuCoin. Ms. AuCoin?
Oh,
There you go.
Thank you. So as we referenced earlier, of course, one of our major pillars in transformation is creating high quality and inclusive early learning and childcare. And that starts right with the educational programs that we have with our partner institutions. So all early childhood educational programs, ECE diploma programs, include foundational learning around equity, diversity, inclusion, and accessibility. So we provide those foundational skills, practicum experience for educators to get into classrooms, to put what's theory into actual practice and see what it's like in an early learning environment and supporting the various needs of children that will be in those programs. We also offer a multitude of professional learning opportunities throughout Nova Scotia. So that's when people are already early childhood educators, culturally responsive training modules. Our early learning curriculum framework recently revised to include more equity, diversity, and inclusion principles and different learning prompts and ways of working with children with complex needs. When it comes to additional funding support, we do have the Inclusion Support Grant, of which 95% of our centers do participate in that program. It's an investment of about $10 million a year, so centers can apply for that funding as part of our annual funding agreement and grant process. It provides funding for additional staff who may work as inclusion coordinators or other supports that might be center specific. In addition to that, we do provide annual funding to the Early Childhood Development Intervention Services. They operate through various sites throughout Nova Scotia. We fund them to the tune of about $11 million per year, so that children who are at risk of or have a diagnosis of a developmental delay who are participating in early learning and childcare environments, they go into those environments to help support the child and the educator to make sure that that is a positive and responsive environment for children. So those are just some of the ways that we support inclusion within early years.
Emily Mumbercat, follow up.
Yeah, thank you. And really, that's one of the key foundational pieces for me in the deal is that we're able to identify children much earlier now because more kids will have access to early childhood, which we know in some communities was we saw that with the implementation of pre-primary too as well, where we saw that we see a lot of communities, unfortunately, where children weren't, the percentages were extremely high of children that weren't accessing any form of early childhood. And just a follow-up question to the department is when you look at spaces, when you're using the dashboard and you're looking at those numbers, what are the spaces that are designated? Do you have a breakdown of that and I know you'd be working with the operators on that too as well, so that may be not something you may not be able to answer today, but when you're looking at mapping out spaces, how are you allocating certain spaces for children with diverse needs?
Ms. AuCoin?
Thank you. So we have an expectation and work with all of our operators to ensure that they are able to support the needs of children from all backgrounds and the various needs that they may have. That information would be held at the center level, but of course would be referenced if they were to apply, for example, for an inclusion support grant funding. They would talk about the supports that they need to help support the children and families there. What I do know, and it was a good point that you mentioned, the increased access to early learning and childcare has been really important for the early identification of children who may have complex needs. As part of the investment that we've made to support early childhood development intervention services, they've been able to increase their supports and the number of children that they serve. So in 23-24, they supported more than 3,900 children that are between the ages of 0 to 5, and some of those children will be participating in early learning and childcare as well. So it is a very important aspect of our system, and one that, again, we continue to work with our operators to grow those spaces to ensure all families and children are included.
Thank you. MLA Duale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is the department, and I think this is just something that's come my attention, and we know location matter. What I mean by that is some of the things that we know you need to have a green space. You need to have a space that the children can be outside and have outside activities. And my concern is, and I'm wondering if there is any mechanism with the department to assist for daycare operators. What I mean by that is most of them, we know, they don't own the properties that they occupy. They rent, they're tenant, and they sign a lease agreement. And those who own those spaces can, once that contract's finished, can say, yeah, thank you, we are not signing a new contract. Please find somewhere else. Is there any mechanism, is there any policies, procedures, assistance within the department to assist? Because once that daycare is closed, as I said earlier, location matter. There will be a lot of devastation. There will be a lot of difficulties, those families and communities, to find out another space that will accommodate. So I'm wondering if there any mechanism, is there any assistance within the department to assist those daycare operators? Thank you.
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. So absolutely, as you referenced, quality is not only about the quality of the educators and the skills and competencies that they have. It's also about the learning environment. So children who are inside, but also, shockingly, children love to run and play, and they need a lot of outdoor space, actually more outdoor space than indoor space. So as part of our licensing or regulatory requirements, all early learning and child care programs are required to either have an outdoor space that was built for them or have access to a public outdoor space, like some of the parks that might be part of a municipality, for example, out within walking distance, because we do want children to spend time outside and be active and certainly be able to learn through play. Within the department, we have health and safety standards. Our licensing officers regularly visit centers and inspect not only the indoor environment, but also the outdoor environment as part of our funding programs that are available to operators. So the recently announced major infrastructure program, for example, funding is available for up to $1.5 million for leasehold situations, which would include indoor renovations to set up the indoor space, but also outdoor space as well. For properties that are owned by, whether an operator is purchasing a property or if it's public infrastructure, there's up to $3.5 million available for new builds or purchasing buildings, and certainly that also includes outdoor space as well. We are also working on design guidelines. As we've gone and done so much expansion, it's been really important for us to help translate what might be regulatory requirements and legalese into more user-friendly language. So we're developing design guidelines that any operator can refer to when they're planning their space and their expansion projects. So that's always considered in the funding that's available to us. There's also funding available through the federal government to make outdoor play spaces more accessible as well, which we know a number of our operators have also availed of.
Emily Dwallet, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, please.
Emily Dwallet.
Thank you. I think my question is not only the space itself, but also assistance of the signing the lists. Because those properties belong to somebody. And my question is, if these operators are being forced to relocate, is there any mechanism within the department to assist to relocate for the daycare? If not, is there any other mechanism that's available to the department to step up and to assist for the operators within the property owners, whether it's a negotiation, term extension, and what have you? Thank you.
So I see you both are chomping at the bit to get to this, so I'll go to Deputy LeRoux first.
Well, status does matter. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just trying to give Pam a break. Yes, Pam has all the details. MLA Diwali, it sounds like you're aware of an operator who needs our help. Please put them in touch with us as soon as you can. Our goal is to assure success for all operators. So if there is someone who has a real struggle, connect them with me or with the department. Our team is here. One of the challenges is actually telling people we are here, we're showing up differently, we're listening differently, and we actually are trying to deliver on 9,500 spaces. If someone is in operational challenge because of lease or next door neighbor, whatever it is, please connect them. And I commit, we will do what we can within our agreement to find success for them, for families, for kids, for community, for our shared success.
Thank you. Ms. AuCoin, did you want to add to that? Or okay, very good. MLA White.
Thank you, Chair. I'll never get a chance to say this again, but Elwin LeRoux knows it takes a community to raise a child. I'm not talking about that one either. Thank you. Earlier, I spoke about the $11 million investment in the minor infrastructure program and the family home daycare grant. It's a big program, so I didn't get to go back because I had one follow-up question. So I want to go back, and I just want to know on both packages, how many applications has the department received under the minor infrastructure program? And I'm going to ask the same thing about the other one. So how many family centers have received funding under the Family Home Center Daycare Grant? Thank you.
Ms. AuCoin.
Thank you. So those are two of our relatively new programs that were announced in, I believe, December and implemented in January. So under the the minor infrastructure program, I need to have the same acronym. We have approved one project so far. That was just announced last week, as I referenced earlier. One of our commercial operators who did transition to a not-for-profit was recently approved to expand a location in Hammonds Plains to add between 70 to 80 spaces out there, which is wonderful. We also have another 5 applications that are at various stages of assessment, as well as numerous inquiries that we've received from operators that our team is actively following up on. When it comes to the family home child care startup grant, so that was announced earlier this year and really became operational in January. And with that, we also embarked on a family home child care recruitment campaign that involved ads both in social media and on radio. And that has resulted in just over 30 homes receiving that startup grant and many others at various stages of assessment, working with our family home child care agencies.
MLA White, is there a follow-up?
Perhaps. I'm just curious. You said 30 homes received funding for the Family Home Center grant. I'm just curious how long it will take them to get up and running. Is that a long turnaround?
Ms. AuCoin.
So it can depend on the individual situation of the operators. The Family Home Startup Grant was in response to consultation with the sector. Family homes are licensed and regulated. They are required to have developmentally appropriate learning environments, safe environments for children. So starting up was a bit of a barrier for some homes. Maybe it was having to install a fence or something even like buying a computer so that you could work with us on biweekly grants, or if it was, for example, the subsidy program, installing flooring, things like that. So really having the Family Home Startup Program, $7,500, again, that was developed in consultation with the Family Home Child Care Society, has really helped with expanding within the family home space. Those 30 homes, again, we have a target of creating 25 homes a quarter, and we were able to exceed that within just about a month of having the Family Home Startup Program. We work on an average. The ratios in family home and in centers vary based on the children that are within that home. So we do use an estimate of approximately 6 children per home for the basis of our space calculations.
Thank you. I will go to MLA Young, then MLA Hanson, and then MLA McDonald with about 7 minutes left of our questioning. So MLA Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I had a really witty remark, not today, about transferable skills as MLA to my question. Not today, not going down that road. Okay, just to get back to my question here, just in simple terms, I want to open a childcare centre in rural Nova Scotia. What's the steps? How do I go about, how would I go about doing that, whether it's home or in centre?
Ms. AuCoin?
So firstly, great. We're very excited to talk to anyone who's interested in opening, whether it's expanding childcare in a community or somebody who's brand new to the childcare space, whether they want to open a new center or within a family home environment. We have done a lot of work to put the information about our expansion programs on our website at childcarenovascotia.ca. If you go on there right now, one of the top items on the banner is information and funding available for space creation. So anybody can go there, learn about the eligibility criteria, the funding available, and we have a team within the department who is responding on a daily basis to inquiries that people have. So anyone who's interested, I would say the first place to go would be childcarenovascotia.ca, and information is there to point you to resources and other people you can talk to learn more about those opportunities.
Is there a, no? Okay. MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just about some spaces. Our office hears regularly from parents that are unable to find childcare, specifically infant childcare spaces. Some who have even had to delay going back to work. So we know that the initial action plan planned for only 275 infant spaces by 2026. Is this number sufficient, or as like under the agreement, the funding is adjusted annually by population growth? Is a target space creation used in the same way, or is it just based on the numbers till that year?
Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the question. I can start with that, and Pam will give you the details. I just want to go back to when a family needs child care, it is a concern for that family. If it's infant care, that is a reality. If it's for toddler, if it's after school care, we're also working, as MLA Mumbercat mentioned, about the 24-hour care for healthcare workers. If we want to provide 24-hour care, again, we have to expand in all areas. So fundamentally, Pam can give you the breakdown, but we recognize we're looking to expand in all those areas across the province. I want to assure you of that.
Ms. AuCoin.
So infant care, like any child care, is certainly important. And coming from a market-based model where you make decisions based on the parent fee you can charge, ratios, and that sort of a thing, it's not uncommon to see fewer infant spaces than others because they're more costly to create, and the ratio of adults to children is lower. So it is absolutely a priority to create spaces across all age groups, so including infant, toddler, and preschooler. And we are removing the barrier of the cost to create those infant spaces by certainly providing government funding that is covering those costs. So far, within our expansion projects, we have created just under 160 new infant spaces through the expansion projects that have been announced, and there are another 160 about spaces to go. So we will have achieved the 250 target that was outlined in the Canada-wide agreement, but we obviously know that we need as much childcare as we can possibly create across all age groups. With our new programs that have been announced, we will be asking applicants to identify the spaces that they want to create across infant, toddler, and preschool spaces, and we'll prioritize projects that have spaces across those categories because, of course, kids grow up, they need to transition from those infant to toddler to preschool rooms, so that will be a priority for us when we are assessing projects.
Thank you. MLA Hanson, for a follow-up, you have about 2 minutes and 10 seconds.
All right. Well, in saying that, when we were talking about the action plan, it directs that the ECE compensation framework should be developed using living wage self-sufficiency standards as a minimum. Do you feel that this target has been met?
Ms. AuCoin?
We are very proud of the investments that we've made in Nova Scotia within the early childhood educator workforce. We started a couple of years ago with what was a wage floor model of ECEs, depending on their level, being paid $15, $17, or $19 an hour, to what we currently have, which is a wage grid that recognizes education and years of experience. Our ECE level 2 is what we would call our benchmark position. Our goal is to have 70% of ECE workforce at a level 2. We are currently at just under 60%. That ECE level 2 wage ranges from $53,000 a year of an annual salary to about $60,000. So the midpoint of that is about $56,000 a year. Because of our wage grid, early childhood educators who work in leadership positions as assistant directors or inclusion coordinators earn 10% more, and then at the director level, it's 20% more. So that wage grid really provides transparency and predictability and fairness across the sector. So it supports ECEs who want to move to other centers because of their, we know that can be disruptive, of course, when that happens, but we want to support ECEs in working in locations that work for them. So having that fairness across the sector now is very important. In addition to that, our investment in pension and benefits, a defined benefits pension plan, which we're one of the first provinces or territories in the country to do that, which was met with resounding success and based on feedback that we had from the sector and what it is that they wanted. So we've also tied wages to broader public sector wage increases, which has never happened before, and it again allows for that continued wage increase as public sector wages are adjusted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. AuCoin. Right on schedule. That concludes our questioning by our members to our witnesses and guests today. So what I'd like to do is give everybody at the table an opportunity to provide any kind of closing statement. I'd like to ask you to keep it fairly brief if you could, but we can maybe go in the reverse order that we did from the beginning, and I can begin with Dr. Finley if you'd like to provide a closing statement.
Thank you. In my opening statement, I talked about 4 reasons why the focus on not-for-profit and public services were important. And then in my response, I only elaborated on 3, so I want to end by talking about the 4th, which I think is a really exciting opportunity. And that is the opportunity to integrate childcare with other important public services. This really provides us with an amazing chance to transform not only childcare, but to build a network of strong public services. And I just want to use long-term care and childcare as a quick example. I'm going to tell a bit of a story. I think both of these are areas where we know that public services in both long-term care and childcare are essential. Before I moved to Nova Scotia, I lived in British Columbia, and I was doing a project there in Surrey. And at one of the community planning tables, there was an ongoing discussion about why seniors weren't using the really fantastic services that the community organizations had collaborated on to provide around the community. And the answer they realized was because most of them were grandparents and they were taking care of their grandchildren. And so then they talked about, well, why can't we have services that are co-located, where seniors and children have access to services in the same place? And to me, this is what this expansion in the public sector for childcare allows us to think about. We can think big about how we provide services to the public, from the public, that allow us to think creatively about services that might serve children and seniors in the same place, or services that combine hospitals and childcare, or services that combine post-secondary education and childcare. I'm from the Mount. We were already doing this. And so I just think we really have this really exciting chance to think about these things in a different way. And as I said at the beginning, optimism is not my usual approach when I'm talking about public policy, but I really do think we have the tools here to create some quite significant and life-changing services.
Thank you, Dr. Finley. Would anyone from the association? Okay, Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to close by thanking everybody for inviting me here today. And I'd just like to speak on behalf of the operators, because I am a childcare operator, and that I have taken this transformation in a positive light. I have created great professional relationships with the folks at the department, and I have been advocating for my colleagues to do the same. We're not going to expand childcare in the nonprofit sector if directors don't feel supported. I will continue to advocate and I will continue to support my colleagues, and I'm very excited for what is to come for Needham Early Learning Center and expansion, as well as creating a more professional outlook for our early childhood educators. So the wage scale, the pension and benefits are all great things, and we'll continue to support that and continue to support our early childhood educators, because in the end, they are the ones on the floor doing all the work and they deserve the recognition. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Thompson.
Thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to conclude by saying that Nova Scotia has the responsibility and the opportunity here to build a high-quality system of early learning and childcare. This is a historic moment for social policy in Nova Scotia, and it would be a shame not to take advantage of it. But childcare is a really complicated policy area. It has a lot of moving parts. It includes a lot of the things we've discussed today: space expansion and auspice, educator recruitment and training and education and curriculum development, and developing a workforce strategy to ensure educators are supported once they're in the system. All of these are really essential to build a robust and sustainable system. And Nova Scotia, with this federal program, has the opportunity to take leadership nationally. People are watching the pension and benefits program across the country, and implementing that or looking at it in their jurisdictions. That's a very cool thing. People are watching, and this is an opportunity for Nova Scotia to really take the lead. And I just wanted to emphasize as well that childcare is a public good, and by signing on with the federal government, that bilateral agreement to create a childcare system in Nova Scotia, we have committed to providing this public good of early learning opportunities and childcare that, if done right, will see benefits in Nova Scotia for our youngest citizens. Those investments will come back in spades. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Ms. Elliott, do you have a closing statement?
First, thank you very much for having me here today. I think two takeaways I'd just like to say. First, the quality education of our early childhood educators is foundational to this system. And in the time I've been with the college, about 20 years, this is unprecedented, the amount of support, communication, and openness from the department. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And Deputy LeRoux.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick things. I'm a teacher. I'm a big fan of a call to action. MLA Young offered, if I wanted to open a family-based childcare center, what would I do? I'm going to offer that as a call to action to us all. It's something we can do. If you know a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, an uncle, someone who's thinking, I might do that in my home, now is the time. Invite them to contact us. Our team is actively working to support success. Family home childcare in our province matters throughout our province. If anyone's listening live or watching through Hansard, now is the time. It is a call to action. It takes all of us to make sure that everyone knows. If you've ever thought about it, reach out and we'll help you think through it. And maybe there's an opportunity for you. Secondly, I referenced our dashboard that you would see around space creation. The clerk can follow up, we'll send in writing, but for the record, Pam mentioned several times, Childcare Nova Scotia, all one word, childcarenovascotia.ca is our website. You would find all of that information there. We're happy to follow up in writing as well. Thank you for the opportunity on behalf of the department to appear before you today.
Thank you. And for the millions around the world watching, that's only for Nova Scotia residents, that call to action, correct? So, thank you. So, again, thank you very much for all of you coming today. It was a great conversation. And we'll take about a 3-minute break to allow our witnesses to leave, and then we'll get back to our committee business. We stand adjourned. Order. I'll call our meeting back to order so we can attend to our committee business. All our members are here. Oh. All right. So we will begin with our committee business. There was a correspondence from March 26, 2024, a letter from the Minister of Education and Early Childhood Development concerning enhancing local voice in response to a request for information arising from the meeting of September 5th, 23. It was forwarded to all members. Is there any discussion about that letter? Okay, seeing no discussion. The only other piece of business was a motion that was on the table from our last meeting. During the meeting of February 6, 24, the firefighters' mental health support. The issue of cancer among firefighters arose, and a motion was made that this committee, I'll read the motion, that this committee write to the Department of Health and Wellness to ask that a meeting be held with the Halifax Professional Firefighters Association and the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia to discuss pre-screening needs in firefighters. So that was a motion that was on the table when our meeting time expired last time. And is there any discussion? MLA White.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I'm reading this too deep, but when I was briefing for this meeting, I read the motion as it is. And I think when you hear me out, I'm proposing language friendly. I think it's friendly to the motion, I believe. And I think maybe when I'm done explaining, I'm sure Emily Diwali will agree with me. The firefighters' cancer is an extremely important topic. We all celebrate together when we increase the number of cancer coverages, and that's only a piece of the puzzle. So now we're talking about pre-screening. And when it comes to the motion, maybe I make too much of it, I don't know. But the committee, it asks that we ask that a meeting be held. And on one hand, I find that's kind of, the answer is no, so it's no. So I'll read my motion when I'm done, but I want to encourage the department, to be honest with you, to speak with firefighters and to meet with them, to be honest with you, because I think there's a lot to this. There's, as a firefighter myself for 22 years, there's a responsibility on me as a firefighter to have my equipment, my turnout gear washed regularly. If I don't do that, then I'm exposing myself to lots of toxins, as most of the province is protected by volunteer firefighters. When I show up on a car accident or even a structure fire, I expose myself to a lot of carcinogens that I don't even have my equipment on. But that is a natural, normal practice in firefighting. So I'm sure Emily Diwali will have something to say about that, but I'm sure he'll agree with me that we are certainly exposed a lot. And then I recognize that I don't know what the schedule for the department is and what they're doing. I don't want to assume, this almost assumes that they're not talking, and I don't want to approach it. I don't know if that's even where we should be. So to cut to the chase, I'll read you what my amendment would be. And you may ask me for what words are changing. I'll feel free, I'll explain. So my motion or amendment would be that the Human Resource Committee write a letter to the Department of Health and Wellness encouraging them to engage with the Halifax Professional Firefighter Association and the Fire Service Association of Nova Scotia to discuss pre-screening needs in firefighters. I'm asking for encouragement to engage with them because I realize there's a lot of aspects to this. First, I don't know the department schedule. I don't know what they're doing, but I do know there's a lot of back to this that firefighters do understand and will be dealing with and have something to say about. So I'd like to encourage them to get together and speak on it. So that's my motion.
And I see MLA Hanson, you had your hand up to discuss that amendment to motion?
Absolutely.
Okay. MLA Hanson.
So reading this, I didn't take it any other way other than what you're saying, but you're just changing the words. I think it stands as is because you're really asking is encouraging the same thing. There's nothing wrong with us using big words saying ask that a meeting be held. I mean, it's really up to the department whether they have the timing or whether they're able to. And it's just what it is. We're asking them to make a request to have a discussion with these folks. And based on your experience, I don't have that experience, but experience around the table, that it is a really important issue that needs to be discussed. And kudos to the government that has already put forward, a piece of legislation about that. I think we just need to continue to leave it as is because it's saying what it needs to be said without any omissions.
Okay. No further. Emily Diwali?
Quite honest, sometimes this kind of issues are issues that puts me frustration. And the reason I have this feeling is we're talking about here individuals that no matter what condition they are, they show up. It doesn't matter what condition they are, and it doesn't matter what part of the province they are, and it doesn't matter what kind of call they've been asked to do it, and they show up. Here we're talking about a department schedule and whether they're available or not. And, it's very sad, sometimes we are disentangled of policies and procedures, and we don't look the human side. I will continue to advocate this. I will continue to encourage those who make decisions to look these issues very deep. These are the people that we count when we need them. And I really believe also the idea that we're proposing or what they have proposed, it's actually the best interest of the province. And the reason I'm saying that is if we don't do this and we don't have this, take these initiatives and look before things take place, then we're going to spend a lot of money when those people get hurt. So what I would like to see is, and what I like to encourage the department is, this is a very important item, very important action to save those who are here to save Nova Scotians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So we, MLA White?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if Emily Diwali is speaking in favor or against the motion.
That's what I thought. I thought we put it to a vote. Do you amend the motion?
Well, before we do, I would like to speak some more.
Emily White?
Thank you. I find that we're splitting hairs. And I know I am somewhat splitting hairs, but when you ask for a meeting, the answer is no or yes. That's what you get. I'm asking for encouragement, which Emily Diwali used twice in a statement. He's encouraging the department to engage.
Order. Time for discussion is over. Our next meeting will be June the 4th, 2024, from 1 to 2 p.m. And the topic we'll have agenda setting on the June 4th meeting. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you on June the 4th. Our meeting is now officially adjourned. Thank you.